All right, so I'm going to do a quick review on this 2019 Buick Encore, and I will tell you right now that it's very dirty, and the reason it is because it's a rental, and we've been driving it for 6,000 plus miles in about 2 weeks. So we haven't had time to stop and get it washed or anything like that. We're doing work, and I'm going to go over this, but real quick I'm going to tell you about myself. In my other video, I made a video on the Chevy Cruze. We're going to talk about, there's some similarities in this vehicle and the other, but I'm going to talk to you real quick about what my experience has been and where I come from. I was a ASE Master Auto Technician in the 80s and 90s, and I've actually retired from that type of work, and now I am doing something else. And I'm in the sign business now, so but I still have several vehicles, and I maintain all of them myself. I do not have. I have all my service is all done by myself. I don't take anything to the dealer. I don't buy any new cars because I don't need to, because everything I have I service and maintain and keep. My daily driver is a 2009 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. So I'm used to really good gas mileage, and this has the Ecotec 1.4 liter. It looks to me like it's the same engine that's in the Chevy Cruze, but it doesn't mean it's the same. I'm not sure what the difference is, because the gas mileage in this vehicle was nothing even close to the Cruze. So if you're looking at this thing thinking it has a 1.4 turbo, it's going to get the same gas mileage as the Cruze, absolutely not going to happen. Just letting you know that right now in advance. So if you're thinking about gas mileage, you might want to take a look at the Cruze. Now, a lot of people are buying SUVs, and they think, well, I'm buying an SUV because it's taller or whatever, but you really need to think about your gas mileage as being part of your purchase, because you're not going to be getting the same kind of gas mileage out of an SUV, because it's a higher profile, and it doesn't get the same gas mileage as a car. So we're going to talk about that, and I'm going to show you the differences. Well, anyway, the engine has the 1.4 turbo. There's the small turbo. It looks fairly easy from a mechanic standpoint to work on. There's a lot of space in here. If you notice here, there's a lot of space, even though it's a really compact engine compartment. I think there's a little less space in this than there is in the Chevy Cruze. So if you were looking at, if you didn't know whether you wanted to buy an SUV or not, you might want to take a look at that. We're going to talk about the differences of gas mileage in a second, but you'll see there's a lot of room in here to work. It looks fairly easy to work on. It does not have when it has a lot of space, and the good thing about that from a mechanic standpoint is you're probably going to get it serviced better than if you have a car that's really hard to work on. Like if you bought a Volkswagen Bug, the newer Bugs, Beetle, they're really hard to work on, so of course you're going to get a really bad review from that, because it's going to have a lot of problems that nobody wants to fix. So anyway, this one looks fairly easy to work on. I'm not going to say it's I would say I would take the Cruze above this with the same drivetrain. It looks like it has the same drivetrain that's in the Cruze, but it's either one of two things. Either this engine is tuned completely different, or it is or it's the weight of the vehicle or the profile of the vehicle that makes it less responsive. So with that, we're going to go inside and take a look at the inside of the car real quick. Again, like I said, this is very dirty. We've been driving this and using it for 6,000 miles without doing anything to it other than just driving it. So I'm going to show you some of the features, benefits, the good things and the bad things about the car. There's some things that I do not like, and there's some things that I like. Anyway, one of the things that I do like, and I'm going to turn on the air conditioning here, and the reason that, it says the hood is open. Let me correct that real quick, because I want you to see the dashboard real quick. Alright, I do the same drive Chevy Cruze. I did the same drive in the Chevy Cruze. I did the same drive in the Nissan Rogue, and the Nissan Rogue got approximately 29 miles a gallon. And if you'll see right here, I'm at 5,400 miles on this trip. I actually reset this, and I had about 1,200 miles. So I'm almost 7,000 miles on this car so far, and I do the same drive. It's almost the same roads, the same driving style, everything else as I do in the Cruise, but I have two people in the car doing this drive, and it's loaded down with some equipment, so that reflects the gas mileage. And when I'm doing this job, we are leaving the car idling with the air conditioning on for sometimes 10 minutes, sometimes an hour. So the gas mileage you're looking at is not quite accurate. I really, I don't want to mislead anyone. It's probably quite a bit more than that, but again, like I've done it with the Nissan Rogue, and with the Nissan Rogue, which is a similar vehicle, which I would not recommend buying, but I'll talk about it as a comparison, and I'll tell you why too. But as a comparison, gas mileage wise, I think the Nissan was more like 29 miles a gallon. So, even with sitting and idling for the same period of time, so very similar. Again, like I said, it's very dirty. So anyway, the things that I do like about the car are that it has a regular automatic transmission. In comparison to the Rogue has a CVT transmission. And with that, I really don't like CVTs, and the reason I don't like them is because your engine, to be able to get any power out of it, you're always having to rev it up really high and keep it at those high RPMs for a long period of time. And when you keep it at those higher RPMs in a long period of time, it does a lot more engine wear. So if you're just cruising the car, it'd probably be fine, and those transmissions tend to have some pretty major issues. With this car, what I do like about it is the transmission seems to have a computer-controlled gear shifting mechanism. So what I'm going to tell you is it is actually, every time it shifts gears, it actually lets off the throttle and the boost, and it shifts gears and then reapplies the power and boost. So what that does is make your transmission last longer, and it's less wear and stress on the transmission. It seemed to work pretty flawlessly, and it makes it feel more like a stick shift transmission. So that puts a lot less wear on your transmission. So with that, I'm going to say that I would prefer having this type of a transmission over the CVT. If you're looking at a car and has a CVT, I would want to steer away from that and look for one of these types of things. You drive it. If you drive it, you step on the floor and you notice that the engine kind of powers down, and then it shifts gears, and then it reapplies the power. Then on its own, without you having to do anything, then that's telling you that it's probably a better setup than the CVT. So the things that were pretty good about the car is it comes with a climate control system, which is nice. This one comes with a leatherette interior. I don't know if it's real leather or not. It might be. And the thing that I really enjoy is the auto. GM has a lot of their cars have the auto headlights, and you might say, well, that's not a big deal, but the minute you forget to put your headlights on with the other cars, you will, because all the dash illuminates as soon as you start the car, so you don't know a lot of times, and you have those driving lights on a lot of the new cars, so you don't know a lot of times that you don't have your headlights turned on. So having that is actually, to me, a nice upgrade for your car. The cruise control setup for the buttons I use all the time, and I would highly recommend, if you're driving, use your cruise control. I mean, set your cruise. So many people, I get so irritated when I get behind someone and they're constantly speeding up and slowing down, speeding up and slowing down. All you need to do is just go like this, and then they won't get caught for speeding, because you'll be automatically at the cruise speed where you want to set it. You set your cruise, it has this accelerate, decelerate, and easy on-off button right here. So, and it automatically stays on if you leave it on, even when you turn the vehicle off and start it back up again. So that was pretty nice. The radio setup with the Android style radio is actually very nice. The sound system was pretty good. For you guys interested in that, it's not too bad for a newer car. In fact, it was better than the Rogue, and probably better than some of the others that I've driven. Which I've driven several rental cars. I rent cars all the time. That's part of my business, as I travel places, rent cars, and drive them. And I'm very mechanically knowledgeable. I have many years experience as a mechanic. So, because I was an ASE master auto technician in the 80s and early 90s. So, anyway, very cool if you're looking at a good place to put your cell phone. It's kind of in the way of the steering wheel. These little button magnetic holders are really nice. So, anyway, let's talk about the good and the bad and the ugly of the car. One of the ugly things that I did not like about the car is I carry a ladder. I have a folding ladder back here. If you see, folding ladder in the back, barely fits in this. The Nissan Rogue, we could put it in vertically. This one I can only put it down flat. So there is probably about a foot less cargo space in the Nissan Rogue. If you're needing cargo space, that is an option. Don't like the vehicle that much. Didn't like the power it had. Didn't like anything else. This thing is definitely on the lacking of power side. And if you watch my review on the Chevy Cruze, the actual same drivetrain that's in this car, the 1.4 liter with the automatic, and the Chevy Cruze, when as soon as my foot hit the floor in that car, the tires are breaking loose. It set me back in the seat. 0 to 60 was amazingly fast, and the gas mileage. If you looked at my gas mileage, I was getting 39 miles to the gallon or better. This averaging 25. Again, it's probably more like about 28, maybe even 29. On this is highway and city average. So not the greatest. And that's part of that. So you're losing because you're buying an SUV. So if you don't need an SUV, I'm going to tell you guys, if you don't need the high area in the back, I needed it for renting. I need this part to be high, okay, in the back, because I carry things I shouldn't be, but I carry some extra stuff back there, and I need it when I don't have it loaded right now, but sometimes I do. I have a lot of stuff back there, and I need that high space in the back. If you don't need that, I would highly recommend looking at the Chevy Cruze as a better option. It gets way better gas mileage. It has way better performance. I'm not sure what the difference is in the engine, in the programming of the engine. When I was driving this, it just doesn't have the power that the Chevy Cruze. Not even close. It's not even. It feels like a completely different car. It felt like a completely different drivetrain. It was adequate power. I mean, it was enough to get you around. You get up to speed to get on the freeway. Going up the hills and stuff like that, it was fine. But it was not that punch that you get in the Chevy Cruze. I drive the Chevy Cruze, had the same drivetrain supposedly, and it does not feel the same. I'm almost thinking that the Chevy Cruze has a chipped version of this engine. In other words, it has a computer chip that has different power curve built into it. So in the Cruze, it was basically, I would say, a rocket ship compared to, basically a Pinto. So that was the difference. It's just this car, with the same drivetrain, it just doesn't have the power that the others have. Was the Rogue any faster? No. I would say the Rogue in this thing would be almost a dead heat in the quarter mile. So that, I wouldn't say the Rogue is a better in any way. And I'm not going to say this is a bad vehicle. But if you're needing... But there's so many people who are buying SUVs that don't really need an SUV. If you don't need an SUV, if you don't need a high profile off the ground, like if you have more, off-roading type area and snow and things like that, where you're having really bad, your roads don't get plowed very often, you want the higher profile vehicle, then this might be an option for you. I would go for a Subaru myself, but this might be something for you. But if you really need the high cargo space, it might be good. As far as reliability and things like that, I really don't think it's a bad vehicle. I actually think it's just as well built as some of the Toyotas and Nissans. And a lot of people won't agree with me on that, but I really do. I think that GM, it's really a shame that they're getting rid of cars like the Cruze, because it's really well engineered car, and this is basically the Cruze put into an SUV. And putting the same drivetrain in the SUV and the Cruze, it just doesn't work the same. It just doesn't. Even though, it's adequate, it works okay, it's just not the same. So, the car itself, the way it's laid out, the space isn't too bad. I do notice when you have the seats folded down in the back here, I have a lot of stuff back there, but back here where the seats are folded down, you really don't get a lot of leg room. You sacrifice a lot of leg room, and being 6'3", that can be an issue. If you're driving just for a short period of time, it's not too bad. But we're driving, look at, those kind of miles in 2 weeks, 2 weeks in a couple days. And I still got to go further. We're not even near done. I probably got another 1,500, 2,000 miles to put on this thing. And it's not uncomfortable at all, but it would be nice if you could stretch out a little bit more. The passenger seat does have more leg room. I noticed that with the seats back in the same position. The things that are kind of weird is the cup holders on the side are angled forward so that your drinks are like this. So that's kind of funky. I didn't really think that was very cool. The cup holder in the middle is nice, which you'll use more often, but we use these for like water bottles. Of course I have water bottles in here, all kinds of stuff. And there's weird little compartments like this here. Pill container fits in there for that stuff, chips or something like that fit up in there. The air conditioning works good. It was plenty cool. Even on a very hot day, we're talking about 100 degrees in Florida. It was great for that. The controls like the OnStar and stuff like that are kind of nice to have. And the thing that's nice is the XM radio is pretty good having that. If you listen to XM, it's kind of nice that it comes with that. There's a lot of good things, but there's a lot of things on the bad side. One of the things that's kind of weird is, and I've heard from my other review that there's a way to turn it off. I haven't been able to figure it out. I haven't spent enough time on playing with the controls. I did play with them a little bit, but there's a way to turn off this auto stop. And what auto stop is when you're driving to save fuel. And more I'm investigating this, I'm really not interested in this auto stop thing. I think this should be disabled. If you can be disabled, I would definitely disable it. Is what it does is when you're driving, you get up to a light, and if your air conditioning is at an adequate temperature and everything's ideal, it'll actually turn the engine off, and then you'll still get cold air coming through the vents until the compressed air from the air conditioning starts to dissipate, and then all of a sudden the engine will start back up again. So the engine will stop and start maybe once or twice at a light. You don't really feel anything. There's no delay. I mean, as soon as you let off the brake, the engine starts back up. There's a little bit of a jump. It's not much. It's tolerable. But the thing this is the problem with it is how is that going to wear on the starter? And I thought they said I have an inductive starter in them, but I was listening to it and with the window down, and I did notice that it did have a gear sound, like it's engaging just like a normal starter does. So that's going to wear that starter out very, very quickly. I don't see how it's going to last. And it could wear the flywheel. There's a lot of issues with that. I really would, if you can disable it, I would look into that and make sure that it was disabled and leave it disabled. Well, other than that, pretty well built, not a bad car. I really, if I was looking for an SUV, I might consider, and this suited my size needs, and that was something that I really had to have. Myself, I would choose a car, but or a station wagon, a different model maybe. Like I said, I have the TDI Sport Wagon that fits my needs better. But for an SUV, I suppose this is pretty good. It's not bad. I'm not going to say that it's perfect. It's got its issues. It is General Motors, and again, General Motors has had many problems for over the years with things like solder connections coming loose on the wiring for the dashboard and things like that. And they've had, I don't know if they fixed those issues or not. Probably not. It's probably still the same Delphi ignition or the ignition parts and all the stuff that they build. So those are the issues you're going to have probably, and those are things that I've had in the past with General Motors. Other than that, really, I found most of their engineering and stuff like that's pretty well built. And I haven't driven the Ford comparison of this. I, again, haven't been a real big fan of Ford because every time I've ever worked on Fords or had them, I've had particular problems, and they've been more problematic than General Motors. So I usually steer clear from them myself. But you know, I mean, all of a sudden, I used to be back in the 80s. We thought, wow, the Fords came. They made their game come up. They gotten better. And then after my friends purchased them, we had major issues with them. And you know, it seems like they paint a nice picture. You know, some of the new cars look pretty nice. They got nice features and things like that, and the bells and whistles they put in them. But again, they always have built a cheaper car than General Motors, in my opinion. So anyway, this is kind of where I'm at on this thing. There's good stuff and there's bad stuff, and there's, you know, again, but if you're the kind of person that you're open and you're not really sure if you want to get an SUV, really hop in this, drive it, and then hop in the Cruise, and then put your foot clear down to the floor. When you get in the car, okay, and you take off at the light, make sure that your foot is pinned tightly to the floor, and hold onto the steering wheel very tightly, because it will break the tires loose. When I drove it, and it has the same drivetrain, especially, you know, supposedly that this thing has, and this one will not do that. It's just a completely different setup. So I don't know if it's just computer managed different, or if it's partly computer and maybe they put different, it feels like to me like there's a larger Venturi on the Cruise than there is on this. It feels like maybe the same engine, but they actually put a smaller Venturi so that it does not have as big a carburetor type. You know, it doesn't have a carburetor because it has injection, but it has these. The Venturi is basically, if you've ever watched like racing, where they have the metered holes that might be larger on the Cruise, because the holes in this one are probably smaller, and that's what it felt like, because I heard a lot more throaty sound when I opened up that throttle on that Cruise, and it got way better gas mileage. We're talking about the difference between, you know, on the trips I was on that, I was getting 39, 42. You know, I reset it a few different times for different things, and I did city and highway and averaged 39, you know, 39 and a half, almost 40 miles a gallon, city and highway. Same drive, same road, same everything I've been doing with this. This thing's just not been there. It's just not the same. So if you're thinking SUV, you might want to come back to the table and think, maybe take a look at the Cruise. Talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe. Let me know what you guys think. I'd love to hear your comments, good or bad. And I encourage anybody who is watching this video, take a look at those comments, and you know, help that make you make a decision. There might be other people who have had good things or bad things with the same vehicle, and this is just my experience. Again, I only put 7,000 miles on this. Somebody might have put 50,000 on theirs, but I'd be surprised. That's a lot of miles in a short period of time. Talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.